We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today a Army Colonel retired, historian, author, opinion piece writer, Gregory Daddis. Welcome to Veterans Radio.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, Colonel, you wrote an opinion piece, the title of which was America's Military Reckoning. It's time to stop the ritualistic fawning over veterans. And we all know you don't write the headlines on these things, but
right.
it gives us an idea of what the piece is about, and we're going to come back to that. Greg, when did you get out of the Army?
2015.
So as I say, there's that bridge that you are between those eras for the Army, and it's sort of interesting because maybe that shapes a little bit about the opinion piece that you wrote that I want to talk about. Why don't you explain to our listeners the article that you wrote in late December in Salon magazine, or it's a web magazine, that captured a lot of attention and a little bit of buzz. So
right.
Tell us what you were thinking.
I think mostly it was I wanted to tell a cautionary tale that we need to be really careful about how we treat and talk about veterans of the armed forces, and this is no way there's no way to disparage, or I didn't want to disparage veterans, and clearly I am one. But I think over time in the post-Vietnam era, and I do think there is a linkage between our experiences in Vietnam and today, that the pendulum has kind of swung so far to the other side, where I think many Americans coming out of the Vietnam era felt some guilt about how they treated our veterans, and as a way to kind of reconcile that guilt, I think many Americans now have kind of gone to the too far to the other side, where all they do is thank veterans for their service and aren't willing to be critical about some veterans who speak out in improper ways. And I think it was, when I started seeing the commentary from retired lieutenant generals like Michael Flynn and Thomas McInerney, who are quite literally calling for the president to declare martial law because they didn't agree with a free and fair election. And there wasn't enough veterans that were speaking out against this, that I thought I needed to say something about our uncritical adulation of veterans. And that blanket adulation, as I argued in the article, I think really needs to come to an end. And I think when you see the actions of folks like General Flynn and General McInerney and clearly others who have not represented the armed forces well at all, if you think about folks like Eddie Gallagher or Clint Lawrence or Robert Bales, who quite frankly, in my opinion, are war criminals. They don't deserve our admiration just because they wore a uniform. And I think that's okay to say. To point out some untoward behavior that is not healthy for our democracy is okay. It doesn't mean that we're less patriotic by speaking out against them. And in fact, I would argue it is our patriotic duty to speak out against these veterans who are, in cases like McInerney and Flynn, calling for martial law, that it's patriotic to stand up against those and not just blindly accept them because those words are coming from folks who wore our nation's uniform.
I think everybody would probably agree with you that just because you wore the uniform doesn't make you an angel, doesn't make you right on everything you say and do.
Listen to this full episode and more on the Apple Podcasts app, Blog Talk Radio, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio.